Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today's video is really just a follow-up to a couple of recent videos. Firstly, there was one I did last week talking about, in particular, the lack of photographic evidence of the burn pit. And also, it was nice on Sunday to have a wee chat, albeit briefly, with the dude and the Aussie. One of the things that we touched on was obviously the sort of parallel to Making a Murderer, which is the staircase. I have a certain sympathy for the Durham police in that when they went along to this big mansion house and they've got a wife, a dead wife, in a pool of blood, one can surely forgive them for thinking, is this a death by accident, or is this murder in order to claim insurance? And I'm sure that a lot of police go along having to keep a very open mind about the circumstances of a case such as Kathleen and Mike Peterson, because immediately they suspect that this Mike Peterson might be a bit clever. He might be trying to pull some sort of fast one on them. And isn't it interesting how David Rudolph mentions the fact that in Scotland, the two verdicts that we have here in Scotland are guilty and not proven. Whereas over there in Durham, it's either guilty or not guilty. So therefore, do the people, are they convinced? The jury, members of the public, the media, is everybody convinced that Michael Peterson is completely guilty? Or are they completely convinced that he's innocent? Now, the way it should work is the benefit of the doubt should go with Mike Peterson, and therefore if they have any doubt about his guilt, they should go for not guilty. But of course, with double jeopardy, there's a fear that somebody could get away with doing a murder. Whereas I say, here in Scotland, double jeopardy is excluded in 3 different circumstances. One of them being if new evidence comes forward, or if there's a confession. Can't quite remember what the third one is, but there's 3 categories under which double jeopardy does not apply, and therefore somebody in Scotland who was found not proven could later on be re-prosecuted. For me, therefore, it's clear that the police dislike Mike Peterson, and therefore it has the knock-on effect of the media disliking him, and by that I mean all the media. We hear reports from the various days at the courthouse, and as David Rudolph points out, it's as if the press have heard a completely different day's account to what he's just heard. And isn't that one of the interesting parallels with Making a Murderer? The media, or should I say, the media willing, for example, and in particular, to put out the Ken Kratz press conference, and then for everybody to just accept that oh well, we've got this confession, what more do we need? We hear Mike Holbach say, well, there's the case, just put the DVD or the DVD, the video on, you put it in the video player, and there's your case. And as Emily Matasic points out, have you watched it yet? He says, no, not yet. But there is just this blind acceptance that because there's a confession, that's it, end of story, game over. And so I am quite critical of the media and the way they handle things. I don't know if it's partly due to the fact that I was pointed in the direction of Making a Murderer by my youngest daughter, who at the time was she was at journalist college. So there is a sort of hopefully she's inherited from me. Sometimes this not always accepting what we've been told. You know, there's always two sides to everything. Often there's far more than two sides. There's multiple sides, and trying sometimes to get to the truth can prove difficult. For me, as I've said all along, the best journalist to cover Stephen's case by far has been John Ferak. He's the one that's asked awkward questions. But of course he's a journalist, so he's allowed to ask questions, whereas according to some people in Australia, nobody else is allowed to ask questions. I don't think that's the case. I think everybody has not just a right to ask questions, but almost an obligation to try and find out as much as they can. In fact, getting back to the video I did last week, somebody, and it might have been other videos as well, has written in to say that they've started following some of my videos. Asked me the question: has there ever been a moment when, because my sort of theories on, or my thoughts on how Teresa disappeared, because they have ranged, I've considered just about every possibility I think that I've heard of. There might be more out there, but I'm pretty sure I've heard most of them and considered most of them. But they actually asked me if at any point had I ever considered that Stephen was actually guilty. Well, yes, yeah, I have considered whether he's actually guilty. Have I actually thought he was guilty? No. The nearest I came to it was, and I must admit, in my very first conversation with Robert Herman, because he was so calm and relaxed and so assured and assertive that there's nothing to worry about. We have got the right guy. The making a murderer paints us in a bad way, but we've nothing to hide. It was a quality investigation. Everything was done correctly, etc., etc. Well, of course, thank you, Robert, because of your assuredness, I thought, I need to find out a bit more about this, and so I did, and continue to ask questions of people. So yes, briefly, for maybe a nanosecond, I thought to myself, could Steve actually have done this? And then, of course, I had to think, well, if Steve did it, how did he do it? And as I've said all along, he could simply come out tomorrow and say, I want Brendan to walk free. I'm going to give you a confession. I did it. The only problem with that, how did you do it, Steve? He'll not be able to give an account that would match all of the evidence then and all of the stuff that we have since discovered. So no, definitely not Steve or Brendan are involved in the disappearance of Teresa. Certainly, people living nearby have sort of inadvertently allowed interest to focus on them by their actions and stuff on their computers. But as I say, in answer to that question, for a brief, I would say nanosecond, I thought, has he done it? No. Come on, get serious now, get real. Anyway, the video I did last week, as I said, focused on John Ferak's excellent work and his excellent article. And I also tweeted the article and asked the question, has anybody ever seen a case quite like this before or since? In other words, has there ever been a case where there has been such poor photographic evidence of the supposed crime scene? And I actually sent a message direct to John Ferak asking his opinion, and he very kindly took the time to reply. His answer, not yet. He has not yet ever seen a case quite like the Teresa Halbach case in terms of the lack of photographic evidence of the crime scene. One thing he did tell me, which was very interesting, and this is why it's always a good idea to, ask questions of people. There are people out there involved in, expressing their opinions through the media. Well, they need to be asked questions, because that's where you get answers. And asking a journalist is a very good way of getting an answer, particularly if he's of the quality of John Farrack. Let's say he answered that question. He then went on to say that he is in fact in regular contact with Kathleen Zellner, and I'm absolutely delighted. For me, the book is always better than the film. So although obviously we'll look forward to making a Murderer Series 2, the book that John Farrack is going to do about the case, particularly looking at it from Kathleen Zellner's point of view and her efforts to try and find and work out who the real killer is, I think is going to be absolutely great. Looking forward to that. Right, just about run out of time. So many thanks to all my fans over there in Australia. We love you to bits. Keep up the good work and see you again soon. Bye for now.